Welcome everybody to another DoneJS contributors meeting. This is, I don't know, I'm in a good mood right now because CanJS is out and we should hopefully launch the website. And tomorrow I'm giving the first CanJS 3.0 training. And I'm really looking forward to no one saying, well, I don't have to use an attr method in Angular and React. I'm really looking forward to that going away. No one can use that as an excuse anymore because we have defined map. And also I was in a good mood because yesterday I was messing around with some salt shaker stuff, and it was fun to use event streams. Even if they can make your code a little bit bigger. I'll talk about that at the end for topics. So my plan for next week is I'm writing the technical highlights page, or I'm editing it and kind of doing a final draft of it, and then we should be able to. And then we should be able to push out the website. I'm going to write a release article, and CanJS should hopefully launch to the world next week. Wait, is next week Thanksgiving? So maybe not next week, but maybe the week after.
Yeah,
probably. So, because yeah, I'll probably be taking some time off. All right, that's last week and this week for me. Prashant, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I was working on a CanSet issue this week, and this issue was that the date types don't compare correctly. It was issue number 35 in CanSet. So I just submitted a pull request for that some time ago, and this can be reviewed, and this is ready to be merged now. So that is what I was working on. And for the next week, I have plans to take up one issue, number 81 in can define, which is about adding the array prototype methods to define list prototype. I want to take up this issue because I have myself faced some problems with the can list.
Prashant, I was lost in the glory of your pull request and didn't hear what you said. Which would you?
Okay, so this is the pull request was on CanSet issue number 35.
Sorry, I saw the pull request. What is the new issue that you're working on?
Okay, so the new thing will be can define issue number 81. Which is about adding some array prototype methods on define list.prototype. So there are many such methods which are actually missing on define list.prototype. So I'm planning to add those methods to define list. So next week probably I'll work on this issue.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think though, like, it'll be when you start working on it. I'll be curious if you can use some kind like templated function approach. Part of me feels like all you need to do is just. I'm wondering if it's actually possible to just loop through arrays prototype, and anything that you find there that's a function, just copy that over. We might need a special identifier for methods that mutate the array, because they might need to do something special. But I'm wondering if it's you know, for non-mutating ones that just return a brand new like set of data, it should be pretty easy. You just need to make sure they call this.length.
Right. So I saw your comment in this issue. So I'll try this approach that you're suggesting.
Yeah.
And see how that goes.
You'll make a lot of people very happy if you get that working.
I'll be very happy with this change.
Awesome. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, that's
all right. David, you want to go next?
I don't really have much for this week. Gonna skip right ahead.
Yeah, okay. You said probably as if like you weren't sure.
Oh, I've been trying to think, but I yeah.
No problem.
Not for this week.
Matthew?
I've been finishing up Steel 1.0 release. Got a couple of bugs. We got one project to migrate to it. There's another that says they're going to help out as well. So we found a couple of bugs related to removing Steel less and Steel CSS from the core that I'm going to work through. So I think 1.0 will be out next week. I'd forgotten that it's Thanksgiving. I won't do the article probably next week, but it will be on the NPMs, I think. That's all.
Cool. That's yeah. We're going to talk a lot about Steel, I think, in terms of topics once we're in status. So I guess hold on to your seats for that. Kevin, you want to go next?
Sure. So this week I worked a lot on CAN 3.1. A lot of it was just documentation and test stability fixes. There were a few small things that actually got added. The peak change that you mentioned. And then there was another one to allow you to pass a selector to CAN view model like you used to be able to do. So that's working now. And then also in CAN route, you can have space in your interpolated strings. That's something that Adam wanted that got merged in. And then other than that, I made some changes to our CI so that it doesn't run if you just update docs. So it won't take 15 minutes to get in docs changes now, which is good. And then next week, we'll move on to the stuff we need for CAN 3.2. There's one big change to move all the stateful stuff out of CAN util, and then hopefully moving on to DoneJS stuff. So that's it for me.
Awesome. Jason, Adam, anything you guys want to talk about?
No, just continuing on with Bitcentive demo app, getting it MVP ready.
Yeah, and I just started this week on our developer relations and evangelism stuff, and hopefully starting next week, we'll start to see some of the pages updated that just don't have content and more outreach for meetups and conferences. So that's, oh, and also I have already submitted a few DoneJS related PRs. So since I'll be in the contributors meeting next week, assuming that we are having a contributors meeting next Friday, then I'll be able to get my contributor status.
What do you mean?
What do I mean by like becoming a contributor, or if we have a meeting next week?
He's going to make a change so that he can be a contributor, because that's part of the rules.
Yeah, to show up to a couple of the meetings.
Yeah, you're gonna come to 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Ryan, anything?
Sorry, couldn't find the mute button. No, I don't really have anything to contribute.
Cool. All right, now let's move on to topics then. So let's see. I'll hit mine first. There's just an issue someone brought up on Gitter. I created an issue for it. Matthew, I think we're probably in agreement about this. They were trying to SSR a site that was making requests not back to their servers, but to Firebase. And then obviously the cookies weren't working. It might be possible like that somehow Firebase could make, that cookies could somehow also be added to their domain, but I doubt it. I just wanted to bring it up as an issue of discussion. I don't actually know if there's anything else to discuss here. I think we should warn people if that happens.
So there is a way where that Marshall made it so that you can like send cookies along in requests that you make.
Okay.
From the server perspective. So like because he was working on the JWT stuff, so you have to send you have to make a request to the JWT token, to the JWT server. And so he made it so that if you have a cookie that's you could say, hey, for this particular cookie, you need to use this cookie and pass it to the server. So that's from the server perspective, but yeah, from the client perspective, a Firebase.com cookie is just never going to go get to our servers.
Yeah,
I don't think.
Yeah, he maps it to cookie. Yeah, I'll just ping him on this. I really think that the issue really much just becomes, do we warn if people are going to other domains and tell them like these requests will not be sent out with the cookie because we don't have it from the browser.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. Next one. So another person on Gitter was just asking about how we compare to Ionic, and then they shared this progressive web apps from Google, which I guess is, I don't know, maybe this is just like some, people like Universal, and then they put up a page that says, this is what Universal means. I guess this is what progressive means, which I hate the term because there's so many other means for progressive that have been used in web development. But I just want to talk through like how DoneJS does and if there's things that we want to look into. So the first is, so it's like
yes.
reliable.
So there's a couple things with
fast and engaging. Yeah, so like reliable, right? They use service workers. My guess is that they make the app always like work in offline mode. I think this is something that can connect. Like, so one is you could use the app manifests, web app manifests, to make it so that like, all of the JavaScript stuff can be cached and service workers can set that up. The next thing is I think we could make it so can connect we could make a very basic can connect kind of middleware or whatever we want to call behavior that would essentially detect if like an AJAX request failed or timed out, and then it would make that request to some type of cache connection. And then whenever the data was restored, it could either, I think what it would probably just do is call some function, and then the user could decide what to do with the delta of all the actions that people have done.
Well, if you're using fall-through cache, it already goes to the cache first, right? So
fall-through cache does, but then it tries to make an AJAX request. And then also, fall-through cache doesn't do anything for put and post and delete. And like can fixture actually does this. Can fixture can handle, and it's almost like can fixture is almost like an offline mode because it can handle deletes. And then if you were to make a new find all requests, well, it kind of acts like a mini database. So fixture can do this. So we have the capability to do it. It's more, to me, the problem with offline mode is always how do you handle reconnection? Do you simply play back everything? We could just make all the same requests that were made, or do you? What I would probably do is say, here there's a method that you can implement that will give you all of the network type requests that have been made, and you can decide what the heck you want to do in that scenario. That would be the easiest short answer, I think.
Before we go too far down this, should we I would like to tell you what I believe is a progressive web app from Google's point of view, because I think we're missing a major part of this. So from what I understand, and if anybody wants to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 99% sure I'm right, the idea of the progressive web app is that if you meet a certain set of criterias and you're on a mobile Android device or something with Chrome on it or something like that, the idea is if they go to your website enough times and you meet the minimum criteria, which I believe is you've registered a service worker, you're serving over TSL or SSL or whatever it's called, and you I feel like there's a third one that I can't remember.
You
what
have to
the
have
third one is.
there's like a manifest.
Yeah,
right,
thing.
yeah.
manifest.
Then it'll, after you go there a couple times or a few times or whatever Google decides is enough times, it'll say, hey, do you want to add this as an app to your homepage?
Yeah, they have a heuristic. What do you call it? Heuristic. I can't say that.
Yeah.
They have one of those.
And
that
then it'll
decides,
operate like more app-like, where you'll have a button on your home screen, you'll get full
Yeah.
width with no bar at the top and stuff. And so like you're kind of going through this like reliable, oh, we'll solve these problems in a different way. But I mean, we do want, I guess at some point to sort of address the idea that if it's going to be a progressive web app, that it'll have to do these things. Like it'll have to have a service worker, even if we if we already solve some of those problems a different way.
Yeah,
I think we can have a DoneJS add service worker. Like we could have a plugin the way we have other DoneJS plugins, and do that kind of maybe even
let me take a step back. That to me, just making that stuff work is, I feel like, would be very simple. Right? That's not the hard problem. That's just making sure your web app manifest is there. That DoneJS, when it initializes itself, is like building that service worker, setting things up so that it like the app can load instantly, right?
So do we want a DoneJS PWA or whatever we call it that does those things, hits those minimum criteria, and handle that first? Yeah,
I think that's easier done than offline support. I just think that to me it's weird to not have I don't know, maybe
you want to have offline though, because if it's serving from the cache, like just because you can't do post requests doesn't mean you're not offline, right? Like just being able to view stuff is.
And I've heard a couple of videos that say like PWAs aren't necessarily about being offline first, but they're about providing some experience if you can't connect, like even telling your user, hey, we should be loading stuff but we can't connect, and here's some stuff that maybe you've already saved.
I mean, I guess maybe I'm thinking about it differently than they think about it. Like, I guess I would just, I guess I question that usefulness a little bit. Like, what if you're like, I guess any apps that we work on, if you're not online, like, and can't, all you're going to see is like, oh, this app loaded, but we can't for some reason connect to our servers. Is that?
Well, if you have an email app, and you're offline, you can read your emails.
But sure, but that's offline support. To me, that's off. Like you have of your. I guess there's a difference between. Let me separate these things.
It is offline support, yeah.
Yeah, but hold on. Let me separate. Like when it says reliable here, it says service workers enable a progressive app to load instantly, regardless of the network state. Right? Everybody's here. What you're, I think, pushing back on me for is absolutely right. It doesn't say anything about what happens post that. I guess I just question the Bennett, like, is this that great of a thing if it's just the app can load regardless of the network state?
Well, again, like if you're on a plane and you check your emails, is that not useful to you? Do you not think that's useful? Means, though.
It'll load and show you the tweets that you loaded the last time you loaded your Twitter app, but you can't post a new tweet or see.
But that's not what this says, though.
We're kind of muddying the waters, though. There's like offline data available for you at that point, which is kind of what Justin's saying. Like offline is way more useful if there's offline data available, but it's not really useful if there's no data available like that.
Yeah, Justin, I think it's a little bit more clear if you go down to the dive deeper section and then actually and click on the link for their web app checklist. There's like a base set of guidelines, and in the very base, the only offline support is just being able to load the homepage or first page in the app. And then under their like exemplary support for PWAs is things like there's a section on site uses cache first networking and informing the user when they're offline and like more details. So I think that makes it a little bit more clear how they're defining those features. And a lot of the offline, or like most of the offline stuff, isn't included in their like minimum.
Yeah, I guess that was the kind of point that I was making, is that there's different tiers, and we should kind of think about which tier. I think the tier where just like the app loads without network, easily done, right? the tier where it's like, sure, you can read your last set of data, also probably easily done because the fall through cache, I think, already handles that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm saying is like if we wanted to have like a really exceptional experience, well, we would do that first part because I think that's easy, and then we could look into the final part because we kind of already have that baked in a canned fixture. We could support a full offline mode.
So what are the features are you thinking of? You're thinking of like reposting or something like that, like redoing external requests.
I think what my instinct is I don't think we solve that. I think we just provide the hook. Like, hey, you've just.
What are the things that you would that a developer wants to solve? I guess is my question. Not necessarily who would solve it.
What a developer wants to solve is that they would be using the app as if it was online, and then when the application.
So go ahead.
They would be able to create and manage data. So like,
So like if you had a to-do app and you added a to-do, you would be able to add the to-do and it would show up in your app instantly. Maybe you'd have some type of like, gray it out to kind of have a way to say, hey, this isn't really.
It's not
like that.
Not synced yet.
Yeah, it's not synced, and then. And
then you could edit it, you could delete it, you could do.
I think I can connect repost behavior or something like that would be pretty beneficial.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. I think the shortest answer is we just say here's a method that gets called whenever you reconnect, and we're going to provide you all of essentially the requests that you made, and then you can figure out how and maybe what the kind of set of data looks like, and you can figure out what you want to do from there. Because a lot of times there's going to be merge conflicts, and that's a big issue, right? So what you would probably want to do is package all that up, send that to the server. The server's going to send back like, okay, here's what's actually happened in that time, and there's these conflicts, and this is like what your new data set looks like. And we just have to provide a hook for people to like know what to do.
I think that sounds really aspirational. Sounds very difficult to be able to provide data in a useful way that a developer would actually be able to act on it. Say you got the user made these 50 requests while they were offline. What do you want to do with it?
Yeah, we have done this before. MindJet had this where MindJet had it in a very smaller sense. It wasn't offline support, but they did have a conflict where you could make all these changes to the file system, and then someone else could be making similar changes, and then it had to deal with that problem with conflict resolution. Right? Somebody's GitHub does this too. I think that's what I'm saying. I think we step back and we don't solve that. We just let people know, here's what the cache looks like. Here's what the request that you've made, you can decide. And I think a lot of times people will just do maybe last wins, or they'll just say, send it to the server. Server can try to make those if there's conflicts, check timestamps, and then it can just fail and be like, well, you have to redo all of this. I agree with you that I don't think we can solve that, but I think we can give people the opening to solve it. Anyways.
I think it's a good idea.
So do we want to create a couple issues to do this? One to kind of hit the baseline checklist?
Well, yeah, sure. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Fast, I think we're fine here because of the server-side rendering. I'm glad Matthew is looking at Steel's initialization performance, but I think we've done a lot of work here to make the initial load quick. I don't know if anybody has read this site in more detail. Does this include if you're not making requests to the server? one interesting thing we could do is, I was thinking about this, is it possible to have fall-through caching for your module system and have hot module swapping?
What? What do you mean?
All right, so you have this manifest, right? And the idea is if you're offline, like you want to be able to sync. Like I just made a new release of Bitballs or something.
Mm-hmm.
You're using the manifest. Well, how do you decide? Is it like how in these apps? How do they typically decide? Do you
So yes, service workers let you know when like your cache is like if you have multiple tabs open and one of your things is out of date.
So but I guess is the general thing is service workers in the background are just going to be cleaning your code, if you know what I mean?
No, I'm not quite sure.
You're not looking at the app, right?
They're doing what now?
Service workers can run when you're not looking at the app.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So is the pattern going to mostly be then, hey, I'm just pinging the CDN, once in a while, and I'm just going to look for new JavaScript code, and if it's there, I'm just going to update the cache. Is that the pattern?
No, I don't know when the cache gets updated. I would assume it's only like when you reload the page.
Really? Because that to me seems you would have service workers just doing that in the background for you all the time. So it's like, oh.
Yeah, it's made to be like very low level, so you could probably do that.
Or maybe you do it so it's like, hey, if I'm going to open up the app and the service worker hasn't ran for the last maybe there's some what's it called?
Well, what I've seen is like you're served directly from the service worker. So you go to the page, it's going to pull it from the cache. You're going to get the cached version. You're not going to get the most recent version until you reload the page. You know what I mean? Like it's cached first. Yeah. So
you decide if you want the cache first or not, right?
Yeah, you're right. You decide everything, right?
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is, would a common pattern be? What's the term where it's eventually synchronous data? But what's that? I forgot the term I'm looking for.
Like eventual consistency, or
eventually consistent. Would a common pattern be like, hey, if the service worker has updated the cache in the last hour or has looked for a new
they also have
hour, then we're just going to assume it's fine and not even hit? Or do we do some fall-through caching thing where what you do is you serve up the last JavaScript code, or you start running that right away, and then you do hot module swapping as you requested the old code, if there's new code coming and new modules coming in.
The most common one I've seen is that, except without the hot module swapping idea, where it's just the next time it'll do the fall through cache, and the next time you load it, your cache has now been primed with the new version. So
yeah, but that could be a problem, right?
Yeah, that's the most common one I've seen.
Okay.
Demos.
There's also
if you can do hot swapping, then you should do hot swapping.
I think
and you can
Adam, isn't there a way where in service workers that the server can notify the service worker that there's new stuff? I think there might be a push way or something. I feel like
there is some sort of push way. Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
The service.
So instead of pinging, yeah,
that's
maybe
interesting.
instead of pinging, the server just tells. I don't know.
Yeah, because what you want to avoid, I mean, the more you can make it so it's like, hey, we just pushed out new code. All the service workers just go download this, and then it would be really cool if someone's I don't know if you'd want to do this, but they're looking at the app and it just hot module swaps right while they're using it, and it's a whole new interface. That would be crazy.
What I've seen where they'll show a notification to the user that's like, hey, this is stale. You should update your page.
Yeah, that's probably the way to do it. Okay. Engaging. This is really just about the manifests for the most part and push notifications. I don't think there's much other than web app manifest, which has to do with this as well. I don't know if there's much to do there. Any other thoughts about this?
No one really touched on it directly, but in terms of making the app just available offline. Forget like the post and making updates and stuff, but like because of our bundling system, we can, in theory, prefetch a good portion of the app, even if they don't enter those states of the app. Like, is that something that we're interested in?
Yes, I have always, and Matthew's probably smiling because I've always like said we need to add this as like a core functionality or very near core functionality to Steel, which is right after the initial, whatever your first main module loads and it imports the kind of first pages imports, then in the background we load all of the other, we prefetch all of the other JavaScript modules, so if someone changes pages, they're already there. Yes, I agree.
Actually, I posted an issue that was related to this yesterday.
Awesome.
And do we have any like kind of hooks for like, let's say we prefetch another state of the app the user hasn't entered yet, but that state also loads data. Is there a hook for just like letting another state of the app load its data that it needs, not just the modules, but the actual?
No, that would be an interesting. Yeah, I don't. That would be. You could do. I mean, there's no hooks for that. What I mean, to me, it's most of this stuff is just like in your. You know, you have your. Well, I guess it's you have your app. You know, you have your application view model. What I would just do if you wanted any of that is just set it like all of this stuff. By the way, and maybe this is just good to like let everybody know. If you want to do a lot of this stuff, it's not that hard. Just do like this. A very dumb implementation of this would be to wait a half a second and just put this in your like I don't know app.main. Wait a half a second and then just write something like this. You know, page like app page thing, right? Whatever pages thing, and just write all of those out. And this will, it will execute it. Is there a non-executable version of system import, Matthew?
A non-executable version?
One that won't actually run the code. I think it's fine to run the code, by the way, for most of DoneJS app. It'd be fine to do this, but there isn't like it's just a fetch. I could just do system.
Or you could just, I think we should have like lazy load tags that do that essentially for you.
Sure. I mean, we already know your bundles, and that we just all you need to do. You could even write a for loop. System.bundle. So just go through and import all of your bundles in the background after a second.
Yeah, my thing is this has always been is you don't like necessarily always want to load everything. Like do you really want to load your terms of service page in the background that no one's ever going to go to?
Sure, but you could do it manually too. But anyways, and then all you would do is you could do the same kind of like the problem is apps, unlike you know, there's no association between necessarily a page and its data. So you couldn't really do this. You could, you know, if you knew what the page was going to do, well, you could do like to-do.getList and free, and then just, you know, once you would have to do this to make it actually work. Because the problem is this is going to preload your, well, it would load them into the cache. But if you wanted them actually like live, so that a request didn't even need to go out, you would need to get your list of to-dos and then you would list that on, you know, length or something. You need to bind on it so that it knows to keep it in the store. You could do stuff like this yourself if like one page you wanted to preload its data. This is so common. Anywho. Anything else? Any of these? Cool.
So is this like something we should like make an issue for, like where we like say, hey, yeah, let's add a thing to say like, you know, DoneJS add PWA and it adds a manifest file and whatever else it needs.
Yeah.
I created that issue already.
Kevin, you're amazing.
So if anyone wants to add details that I didn't.
Let's move on to the Matthew, the topics that you want to talk about.
Right. Which ones did I want to talk about?
You have the Steel NPM issue.
Yeah, let me share my screen just so I can explain that to the viewer who will have no idea what I mean otherwise. Can you see my text editor here?
Yep.
Okay, so the problem is that, well, it's actually, this has always been a problem. It's just kind of surfacing now that we've removed Steel, or removed CSS and less from Steel. The problem is that if you have a library that like depends on loading CSS, for example, your dependencies actually don't get loaded until you start using them, which means we don't load. Let me just make this foo. You won't actually load your foo package JSON until we see, require foo in your code, which is a very nice thing because it prevents a lot of unnecessary requests otherwise. So that's essentially the problem, is that for like CSS, we need to have already fetched the Steel CSS in order to know that it's the CSS plugin. It's the thing that configures itself as a plugin. So that's the essential problem, is like how do we do this so that, like, for example, Steel QUnit, it loads some CSS. How? Without the most direct way is, well, if the user just installs Steel CSS, then it's going to be configured and it's just going to work. But that's not ideal.
Matthew, because I just have this thought. Sorry to interrupt, and I don't want to forget it. Is it possible now, if we do make this change, this pre-configured change that you're eventually working your way to, is it possible that right now your application, every dependency package.json is loaded? Would this change that necessity so that also apps would only need to progressively load their?
Could you state that again? I didn't quite understand.
Yes. So right now, applications load all of their package.jsons, all of their dependencies package.jsons.
Wait, stop. Let's stop there. What's an application?
Highest
a web page?
Highest level.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Right. I understand. So, and you're saying that when we load tabs, load all of its dependencies as well?
No, I'm saying the opposite.
What's the opposite is what?
I'm thinking that we should not be loading all of the package.jsons anymore. We should only be loading them on demand, just like we do for dependencies package.jsons. We only load them on demand.
But then that means the user is going to have to.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyways, go through your talk. Say what you're.
I have a couple of ideas. I don't really have a preference. One is just that, this tabs library needs to say that it's using the Steel CSS plugin, and I think there might be a build bug with this currently, but that's a bug. But anyways, this should work in theory. The problem with this approach is that it's always going to use Steel CSS. So if the user in his package.json has done CSS, for example, we would want tabs to use done CSS. You know what I mean? So by explicitly saying your dependency this way, you're preventing the user from overriding your plugin choice. In some cases, maybe.
Is that really a problem? Could we?
Well, in some cases, not. In some cases, you're like, no, I definitely do want to use Steel CSS.
Also, could DoneJS fix this by using mapping? and just saying, hey, everywhere map.
It would, yeah, but that's not a great solution because then it would have to, I mean, you're saying it would explicitly map steel CSS that's a done CSS? You're just kind of shifting the problem. Well, what if there's a foo CSS? Where's the mapping for that?
I mean, where in your application.json or package your application's package.json. That's where the mapping would be.
Well, yeah, but that's this.
But I think this is really important. Like, I want to make sure everybody understands this before me and you get too much into the weeds, because this is important stuff. So to quickly take another stab at it, essentially, you know, the Steel CSS plugin has some configuration that says, hey, if you see anything ending with .css, that is you use the Steel CSS plugin for it.
Yeah.
And that's really nice. So we have, but that causes problems. How do I? The problem is basically, like, think about something like bit tabs, where I make a widget and you want to import that widget, and I wrote that widget so it just imports, you know, some CSS somewhere. Like bit tabs just imports its own CSS as just, you know, bit tabs.css. The problem is you don't have that configuration. So things break. Right now, current Steel.js 16 deals with that just by making, hey, CSS is like a built-in type. So you can always do that no matter what. It's already configured that way. Same with less. But we don't want that, and it breaks down when you use something like Steel Stash. So we need a solution. There's one solution, which is to make people always put their bang. Like whenever you do CSS, you do bang, Steel, CSS. But then you're also going to have to maybe have a mapping, it sounds like, if you wanted it sometimes to be done CSS.
Yeah, you'd have to know every possible CSS plugin that a dependency might be using.
Yeah, but I think there wouldn't be that many. But you're right.
Yeah, probably.
It would be, it's possible. I think there would be consolidated. I don't think that's too much of a problem. The other side of this is, Matthew, I don't know if you want to show your other proposal.
Some other proposal would be, well, I don't have a good name for this, but it'd be something like, it'd be something like within your Steel config, you're like, hey, I really need this Steel CSS. So it's like, hey, I really need Steel CSS's package.json to load. Maybe like, I don't know, required packages or something like that. And that would the npm plugin be like, when it loads tabs package.json, be like, hey, I also need to load this because it depends on it. Which that kind of it's kind of like a plugin, like the new plugin API I've been playing around with for like ever. It's very similar to that, except in this case we're only loading the package JSON. Whereas with like, if this was like plugins, at least the idea was that we would like actually load Steel CSS. So there's like a little bit of overlap there that makes me pause a little bit. Part of me, it feels like, well, let's just make this plugins for now, and it just does what we talked about. It just loads the Steel CSS package JSON, and then when we actually do the real new plugin API, is that we can make it do more stuff. I don't know. Might be getting too far. Does this idea sound reasonable? It puts the burden on the library author to have to configure that, which I don't think that's a huge burden. You're loading CSS, which is not a standard, you know, it's not JavaScript, so it is a plugin that you're depending on. So
you're saying it would set up that required packages or plugins or whatever to say load steel CSS is package.json. And
yeah, it's going to load it and it's going to configure itself. Yeah.
And that's because the package.json for steel CSS would have that ext config.
Yeah, it's going to have that config
that you need. Okay.
Yeah.
This actually seems like probably the better solution to me, just as I think it would make sense to explicitly declare what plugins that you
are using
you're going to use versus some of the other solutions.
To be clear, you don't have to list your plugins. I think that's what I don't know how I feel about the term plugin. Really what you're doing is you're listing your dependencies that have some type of configuration that's like globally important.
But it's like implicit dependencies. It's not dependencies that you're actually requiring somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. It's implicit.
In this case, but I'm talking about your like dependencies, your package.json. It's like, hey, I want to use Steel CSS. Steel CSS like has some, you know, what do we call it? Like, you know, it's like a super configuration. It has some configuration that needs to run before kind of everything. So I'm going to list that. So I don't know about required packages. That name doesn't. To me, it's more about the configure. It's like mentally, it's like this is the process I need to do if I have any packages that are going to be doing configuration.
Well, there is. Using the word config, there already is config dependencies.
I know.
Which is something slightly different.
Dependencies do that just run. Those are modules that run before.
They're like super dependencies.
It's kind of very similar, right?
A little bit.
Just one is loading package.jsons of one. The other one is like actually loading function.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So is config dependencies that Steel thing?
Huh?
Yes, it's a npm plugin thing. Yeah.
Okay, so can you just put Steel CSS / package.json there or something, and have it say that it's also a config dependency that it loads the package.json for that?
You'd have to put -npm or something like that. You know what I mean?
Another problem is config dependencies load before the npm extension is like mounted.
You should get rid of config dependencies and call this that.
Confuse everything.
I mean, one thing is like, I mean, I guess config, can we call it something configuration dependency? I don't know.
So sorry to make you repeat, Matthew. What was the first option?
What the name? I don't have any good names. This, you know, naming is always the hardest. Oh, the first option is we don't have to do anything, and then you just update your code to explicitly use. Because whatever you put after the bang is going to use that as a plugin. And
could you do that in like your Steel map config? So just map styles.css to styles.css bang Steel CSS in your package.json?
In whose package.json?
In the tabs in this example in your
that's another. The tabs could put text CSS Steel CSS. It could do that as well.
Okay.
And maybe that is well.
So like if a bunch of different things had that ext CSS Steel CSS thing, would that
cause a problem? It's a global config. Yeah, it's global.
Yeah. No, I think it really should be what you kind of had. I think you just need the right name. Because it's more general. Who knows what other configuration things a package.json might be eventually setting up someday, right? ext limits it where this could work for a whole host of other things potentially.
That's true.
Do you have any of those other things in mind? I'm just trying to think of examples where this would
like maybe you want to configure your what's it called? Transpiler, right? I want to use Babel 7. Well, so you npm install Babel 7, it's one of your dependencies, but then you have to say like Babel 7 has to do some configuration stuff in its package.json. So you list that as one of these, config dependencies or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's why it is really close to the plugin thing, the idea. It's just it's not going as far as that would go.
And the difference is just that it doesn't execute it, right? It just loads the.
Mm-hmm.
So can't we just denote that somehow?
Denote what?
Just like in the use the plugin, the same plugin proposal, but somehow.
Well, I'm not
going
going to do that proposal. That's a pretty big deal. Like this is just more.
Yes,
Okay.
but it's like, but
Then
I
I
mean,
kind of.
to say what maybe give some credence to what Kevin's saying, it's kind of like what we did for streams. It's like, yes, there could be more interactions between get and stream and the other methods, but it's okay to start with like an API that isn't,
Yeah.
there are no other
Oh yeah,
objects.
totally. Yeah.
Then
No,
I think you said this already, Matthew. I think that's the best way to do it. Just use plugins, and right now plugins all it does is load the package.json, and then if later you want to do the full thing, we'll figure out how to handle it then.
This is like a V0 version of that. Yeah, I agree. Because I think we'd be able to tell the difference. Because I think with the plugins API, it's going to be a little bit more complicated. It's probably going to be like an object with some other stuff, whereas this would just be an array. I agree.
Really,
I was kind of
the term plugins is just to me slightly overloaded. It can be used for things that aren't like it's plugins to steal, right? But there's
Mm-hmm.
It's in the steal config, right?
Yeah, I will. We can talk about this later. I don't want to get into that.
Well, there's an issue,
It's not
so
as fun for me.
you can put as many ideas as you want.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Is there another issue? Let's go with plugins for now, like this, and then let's move on. Oh yes, sorry. I remember what I said. Do we make people do this for their application? I go yes.
What do you mean by that?
So we're currently Steal in your app, like I mentioned, this was the interruption I made. In an app, it will load every package.json anyways and apply all configuration to kind of your root level package.json, right? So all you have to do currently is install Steal CSS. It just needs to be a dependency, and then CSS just works because we're loading its package.json no matter what. Do we stop doing that, which would have the following benefits and consequences and drawbacks? Two benefits that I see. One is the problem where if you've ever had right now missing like I've done this, I'm trying to deploy a site, some documentation, and I'm not putting every single node module in node modules. I'm only copying some of them over. Steal freaks out. Now I think Matthew's fixed that, but it's still going to try to make every request. It's still going to try to request every single dev dependency and every single dependency. It's going to try to get all of those. So making it so it didn't do that, well, fewer requests. It's only requesting things as it needs. That's always good. Second benefit of this is it's going to force people to do this if they're writing widgets. Anyway, people have to do this if they're writing widgets, but they could very easily make a mistake and forget this, right? If you don't have this and I try to publish bit tabs, well, bit tabs looks like it's working for me, but then suddenly everybody else loads bit tabs, it doesn't work for them unless they've also loaded Steal CSS, right? That's a dangerous thing, right? I could see that causing lots of problems. Drawback is, of course, people have to go in and add this. When they use Steal CSS or they use Steal Stash, they got to go back, Steal plugins, and add this as a plugin.
So how would what you're proposing fix the bit tabs issue? Like how would it cause the bit tabs author to remember?
Bit tabs wouldn't work unless someone went in and added Steal plugin, Steal CSS.
It wouldn't work for the bit tabs? author, you're saying?
It wouldn't work for the bit tabs on it. Like if you were writing your bit tabs and you were working on it in bit tabs and it wouldn't actually load the CSS, that would break.
Gotcha, because you didn't, okay.
Now, one thing we could do if we wanted to be really tricky is could we make it, when you npm install steal CSS, could we just have a post install hook that just writes to someone's package.json? Or is that considered bad form? Because that's what I would want to do.
I mean, for like,
do that, huh? Hello? Matthew's gone, I think.
oh no.
You're back. Anyways, I would want to do that for Steal Stash and Steal CSS because someone's using Steal anyways. So it's like, why not go set it up for them?
I think I missed that. I think what you're saying is when we do, you want to do a post npm install hook. I don't know about that.
More importantly, he wants to overwrite somebody's package JSON on that post install hook, right?
Yeah, just one little part. Just gonna touch it a little.
You weren't even going to touch that part, probably. Yeah.
Just massage it.
I'm going to guess it feels like bad form.
Yeah,
It maybe does feel like bad form, but if we assume people are using Steal, we already kind of do this in DoneJS world anyways. I'm not saying we have to do that. I'm saying I do think it's a good idea, though, I do think it's a good idea then to start forcing people to do this. We don't load every package.json. That solves really, to me, solves two very important problems. It makes it deterministic. Like, it's just suddenly because your widget is being loaded by somebody else, it could break. I don't like that. And it will make loading faster in development, almost certainly.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the only cost of this, of the two benefits you just said, is that whenever you use Steal CSS or Steal Less or something like that, you not only have to have it in your node modules, like your dependencies, but you also have to say, and Steal plugins add this to this array kind of thing. Is that the only extra step? I think that sounds great myself. I think that's a totally reasonable need for people, and like you said, you get two very strong benefits of it.
But Adam, do you remember how your Steal presentation, how awesome it was, and it was
it all falls apart? Yeah,
it's all on the cutting room floor now.
Yeah,
Typing that in.
I have to sleep on that one. I'm not sure. That's also a thing. Like, one thing was coming out soon.
Could we at least give a post install hook to say, hey, you should probably do this, or to check? Maybe it checks or something, and like, hey, this is not there. Probably should be. I mean, I think we could write one of those really easy, and it could be used for all of these types of projects that hook into Steal. I mean, the projects are called Steal-something. To me, it's not that bad. And then we have our cake and eat it too.
Well, I'm not even sure if we should do this first. If we should, not the post install part, whether we should not fetch all the package JSONs.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I guess on the plus side is that at the DoneJS level, we can do this we do everything for everyone. We pre-configure it for you anyways. So you don't have to worry about it as a DoneJS user.
Yeah. So I think we should do it.
I don't know. Maybe.
I'm not the one who's got to make a lot of changes though, so it's easy for me to say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the problem, is that it wouldn't even be, not even that it's that much changes, it's just that it's we want to release it. And this would be a breaking change. So
it would be, but I think it's a good
think about it over the weekend and talk about it again.
Yeah. I think it's a good one. I mean, I think it's the right move. It's the super dependencies are always a problem, but this is a way we have, like, a way now of saying this dependency that you have, your project has, that has a super dependency in it. So we need to label that so special things happen. Otherwise, we go back to the old way of let's just load every single package.json.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
No, we don't want to do that. That's another option, is we load 500 package.jsons. That's like the first way this new Steel NPM worked.
Yeah. There are plus sides to doing that too, though. It is more deterministic for sure, but I'm not saying we go back. But
yeah, that's the easiest way to make all of this work. That's why we did it that way first.
You can just switch to Webpack too.
All right. I can't eject him, but you can't, now I'm not running this anymore. All right, cool. All right, any other topics?
I had talked about Steel tools, but maybe it should wait since we've been doing this for an hour. We can talk about it next week or whatever.
We're over an hour at this point.
Yeah.
And I threw in a topic about now, but I don't really care enough to talk about.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's bring them up next week. We had some good topics for this one.
Is there going to be a meeting next week, the day after Thanksgiving?
Yeah, although, I mean, if people aren't there, people aren't there. I'll just be by myself and make every decision. No, yeah, I'm still planning on it. Because I'm not going to be like in line for Black Friday, so but no worries if people can't make it.
He hibernated.
Yeah, hibernate. All right, see y'all.